Good Friday morning, and a hearty welcome to the Backyard Naturalist series, where we look at all the wonderful, beautiful, amazing species that grace our backyards, and then sometimes we have to look at ticks. Sorry. My name is Tim. I still think this is worth watching, and I hope you enjoy the tick-related stories of episode 46 of season 4 of the Backyard Naturalist, Another Tick on the Wall. With a nod to PBS, this program was made possible by viewers like you. Thank you for your support. If you like this program, we would love it if you would consider purchasing a subscription. We promise those links will be ready soon for the 2023-2024 season. Details and links will be available. An annual subscription is the best way to support this community, or seasonal subscriptions. Thank you to all the past and current subscribers who have kept this program going, who have kept me smiling every Friday morning since 2020. Our next trip in August will be a trip along the Milwaukee River. We're gonna just kind of take a hike and look for all of the past signs of the natural and human history, from the abuse that it's taken to the subsequent healing, and just a really fun way to explore Milwaukee's backyards. Oh, that's not going to be 9 a.m. Ignore that. It's going to be in the afternoon. Very quick updates, just since the space exploration is starting to ramp up again. I think about a year ago at this time, there were a lot of missions, and then we kind of hit a period where there wasn't much. But India has now successfully launched the Chandrayaan 3 rocket. It was launched while we were learning about teeth last week. And this is going to be the first of about a half dozen robotic moon landing missions. So no humans yet. And this is going to be an attempt to land a robotic lander and a rover on the far side of the moon in late August. So we will follow this mission closely, but the launch was successful. And then hot on the heels of India, Russia is hoping to launch its first, well, it's going to launch its Luna 25. And the last Russian lunar launch was Luna 24. And that was in 1976. So they're getting back into the game as well. And then we got a couple of great meteor showers to look forward to. I do tend to say not so nice things about summer. It's just not my favorite season, but it is a really fun season to look at meteor showers. So peaking the evening of July 30th, really the morning of July 31st, we have the Southern Delta Aquariids. It's a better show for the folks in the Southern Hemisphere, but we can see them too. You just kind of look a little bit lower in the sky. Unfortunately, we have a full moon this year, or near full moon, but even with these conditions, you should be able to see about 20 meteors per hour. So if you can't sleep, or if you're an early morning riser, you can take a look for those. And then just a couple weeks later, whoa, that's not, a couple weeks later, the Perseid meteor shower, when that'll peak the evening of August 12th. And this is one of the more popular meteor showers of the year. Originates from the comet Swift-Tuttle. And we're going to have a slim crescent moon as we run into the trail of dust from that comet. And that trail of dust was released back in 68 BCE, which gives you something a little extra to think about as you look at those meteors and when they formed. During peak conditions, it's a little harder to predict, but during peak conditions, you can get 100 meteors per hour. So I always think of watching the Perseids during camping up in northern Wisconsin with my family. Okay, we got to do it. As much as we hate them, and as a biologist, I'm saying it's okay to hate them. Although hate isn't the best feeling for you to hold on to for your own health. But I'm not going to argue with you if you hate ticks, because they suck. I mean, they literally suck. That is the only thing they do. They suck blood, they lay eggs, they die, and then those eggs are going to go be suckers as well. Depending on where you live, they may be a part of your backyard. So this wouldn't be a complete backyard naturalist program if we didn't end up covering them at some point. So we'll rip off that metaphorical band-aid on ticks so we can get on to other great future backyard naturalist topics like leeches and bed bugs and fleas and no-see-ums and head lice. You're welcome. We've already covered the 4 pests that were targeted in 1958 by Mao Zedong in China on previous backyard naturalists. So we have house sparrows, rats, mosquitoes, and flies. There was a big government campaign in China to rid the country of these. If you want to learn more about this campaign, go back and watch the very first episode, season 1, episode 1, Desperate House Sparrows. And then another podcast I often refer to, Stuff You Should Know, those hosts also describe their 4 animals that it's totally okay to hate. And for them, it was mosquitoes and flies and ticks and fleas. So we've got almost all of them except for fleas. And so I ask you, is there anything at all, anything redeeming about ticks whatsoever? Is there any positive spin at all that we can say about ticks? We'll find out. I'm skeptical. If you are a bit squeamish about seeing photos of blood-sucking parasites, you may want to position yourself so you can easily look away or don't watch the episode. If even hearing about ticks makes you go, ticks belong to the arachnid class. So they are their closest relatives are things like spiders and scorpions, mites, harvestmen, my favorite, the vinegaroons. So I guess right off the bat, I have something positive to say about ticks. They come from a good family bloodline, because I respect the heck out of all of their arachnid cousins. But it goes south quickly from here. Even the name of their superorder is kind of sucky. They're the Parasitiformes. This superorder includes mites like this varroa mite. If you're a beekeeper, you know about this mite because they're kind of wreaking havoc on the bee industry. From here, ticks belong to the order Ixodida, a very successful ancient group of small external parasites that feed on the blood of mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians. As an order, they are small. Most of them are less than a 1/5 of an inch long, or less than 5 millimeters long. They're widely distributed. There are 850 species of ticks, and they're more common in tropical areas. Ticks are further divided into 2 major families. So you have the Ixodidae, or the hard ticks, and the Argacidae, or the soft ticks. There is one more line of ticks, the most ancient line of ticks, the Naturalidae, which sounds delicious, like you could spread it on bread and eat it. Ticks are an ancient group that most certainly fed on dinosaurs, and had things gone slightly different when Michael Crichton was writing Jurassic Park, could have been a tick found in amber like this one that brought dino DNA into the world, but alas, he went with the mosquito. Quick tour of the tick anatomy and the things that make them so good at sucking and hanging on, really. So ticks have 8 legs, at least most of their life, but they're not spiders. Spiders have 2 segmented body parts, so their head and thorax kind of fuse together to become the cephalothorax. They have the cephalothorax and then the abdomen, or the opistosoma. Ticks have only 1 body part. Actually, all of those body parts are kind of fused together. The head, the thorax, and the abdomen are fused into one big kind of body lump. So really, there's just one body, and I think most of us, at least myself, when I look at a tick, I think that it has a head and a body because it looks like it if you look at the tick on the right, but actually that whole thing that looks like a tick is their fairly sizable mouth parts. That's all that is. Ticks do not have a separate head. The head is just part of that body lump. And you can see this a little better when you look at their eyes. And this is a new view of ticks, maybe letting me look at ticks from a slightly different angle. But with the aid of the optics here and the aid of a little bit of coloring, you can see where the eyes are in the ticks. They're way back on the sides of their heads. So when I look at this, it makes me look at ticks a little differently. I don't know, maybe they look a little less icky. I don't know. The eyes are fairly sophisticated. They can detect shapes and motions and colors fairly well. So again, what most people think of the head and likely where most people think of the eye should be is actually called the capitulum, and that's all of the mouth parts. So there's several parts to the capitulum. It's made up of two flaps on the side, and if you know spider biology, some of these words will be familiar. So there's two palps on the side, and in order for the tick to get a blood meal, those two palps have to move out of the way. And then the chelicerae come in and they do the cutting and digging and boring. They're actually boring into your skin. It's essentially they're performing surgery, and that allows that hypostome to enter your body and start feeding. The hypostome itself has backward facing barbs that allow it to cling on tight to you once it's inside of you, makes it more difficult for you to pull it out. And even in this photo, it kind of looks like in that electron, or in the microscope photo, it looks like the eye should be on the end of those stalks, but they're not. That's all the mouth parts. Very successful adaptations for accessing your bloodstream. The legs of ticks are covered in tiny spiny hairs, and they have little pincher claws in the end. And the pincher claws allow them to climb up vegetation, so they can do what is called questing. And what this means is that they climb up to the top of a piece of grass or a weed or a flower plant, and then they just put those pinchers high up in the air in a meditative pose, and then they wait. They get those pincers out in the air and they wait. They don't chase down their prey. They don't hunt for you. What they're doing is they're banking on you or some other animal to eventually walk by, and then they grab on you. It's like, wee. Then they crawl around on you kind of to look for a good spot to eat you. It seems a little silly, but it works well. It's actually a bit more complicated than this. And it's likely that they use their sight in combination with their ability to detect carbon dioxide the way mosquitoes can. And they use those to really choose a good spot where you or another animal is likely to come by. Once they've hitched a ride, they find a good secure spot on your body to start to get a blood meal. They burrow into your skin. That flat body plan allows them to remain a little inconspicuous for a while, because they do need a while to get their meal. Their attachment to you is not just physical, it's not just emotional. They actually produce and excrete a cement-like substance that attaches itself to your body. It's like they have a little bit of a gorilla glue that they just kind of put out, and it forms an attachment to your body. Then that makes it easier for them to stay on you, because again, it takes some time to get that blood meal. When they're ready to drop off you, that cement dissolves, and then the tick can just kind of work its way out and drop to the ground. Also, like mosquitoes, they release an anticoagulant that keeps the blood flowing freely, and flow freely it does, and the tick grows and grows and grows. This is especially the case for the female hard ticks, who just get comically big. And if they're the only group of ticks that really get this big, the male hard ticks can't expand as much because the ticks have this kind of a shield that is called a scutum. It's like a dorsal shield. And in the males, that shield covers the whole body. So they really can't get as big as the female. And the female it only covers part of their body, so they can expand and expand and expand to a much greater extent. The soft ticks, they lack that scutum and probably could get really big, but they're also a little more efficient in their blood meal. They don't need as much blood, and so they don't get as big. They want to get onto you and off you as quickly as possible, because when they're on you, they're vulnerable. So if they don't have to get as big, they won't. Once a female tick is full, she will drop off and mate. Sometimes they'll mate on the parasite, sometimes they'll mate on the ground, and then they lay eggs. Lots and lots and lots of eggs. A single female tick can lay up to 18,000 eggs. That's an astounding number, even by insect standards, and a defeating stat for all of us. So she lays this village of ticks, and sometimes it kind of looks like she's deflating like a balloon. And then from those eggs come these little baby, can we call them cute? These little baby bloodsuckers. And they are now tick larvae. This photo makes them actually look big. They are tiny. They're about the size of a period. So take a decently sharpened pencil and just press it onto a piece of paper to form a little period. That's about how big these larval ticks are. Tiny, 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 tiny. And then when they're born, Amanda and I both mentioned, normally they have 8 legs, but when they're born, they only have 6 legs. So the first thing that a larval tick needs to do is quest again. And because it has like 8 billion siblings, the chances of them finding their own questing site are pretty slim to none. So they all gather around this, this kitchen table waiting for an animal to walk by. This questing is a very important first step, because the first thing a larval tick needs to do is get a blood meal. They need a blood meal before they can do anything else in life. If they don't get that first blood meal, they'll die. Fortunately for the tick, it can remain in this phase for quite a while. They are very patient and good at waiting. And they kind of have to be, because they have to wait for an animal to walk by. The first blood meal for most tick larvae is something small, a bird or a mouse or a lizard, something low to the ground. And then after this first meal, they drop off back to the ground, where they grow a bit, and then they molt into a nymph. And then they celebrate their successful first blood meal by growing an extra pair of legs. So as a nymph, now they have 8 legs. Larvae have 6 legs. They're not insects. Nymphs have 8 legs. They're not spiders. And then as nymphs, they celebrate their nymphdom by completing a second quest. And now this time they have more pairs of legs to hold on to the plant, and they might find their own piece of real estate at this point. Then hopefully they get a second blood meal, and it could be from a slightly bigger prey animal. And then again, they get their blood meal, drop to the ground, where they grow and molt. And so here's a tick molting from its nymph stage to its adult stage. If all this happens, congratulations, you are now finally a tick that is of age. You are an adult. You can do all the things that adult ticks do now, and you will celebrate by going on another quest again. Yay, you need another blood meal. At this point, you're big enough that you could actually stay in this quest pose for up to a year without dying. So your training has resulted this extreme Buddhist-like patience. And then now at this point, the ideal quest host is something larger, like a dog, or a deer, or a ewe. And most ticks are what we call 3-host ticks. They need a host as a larvae, a host as a nymph, and then a host as an adult. And then in between each of those hosts, they grow. After the final blood meal is when they mate. If you are a male, you likely die soon after mating. If you're a female, you also die soon after mating, but first you have to lay all those eggs. This is a very successful life plan. And then what really sucks for us is that even though ticks aren't born with those crazy, awful diseases that they give us, what often happens is that they contract the disease from one of their earlier hosts, and then they become a vector. Ticks are the #1 disease vector in the animal world and are the #2 disease vector for humans after mosquitoes. Tick diseases need their own episode. And we've all heard of Lyme disease and how awful that is. It's been spreading rapidly across the country. There's a lot of other diseases like Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which can really take you out and even kill you if you don't treat it. In other areas of the globe, you have the Queensland tick typhus, the Flinders Island spotted fever, and we're considered dead end hosts because we don't become a vector. We don't become contagious. We're just this unfortunate recipient of the life cycle of this bacteria or the protozoa. We're kind of collateral damage in this highly successful plan. At least I think. If I'm wrong about this, Amanda will set me straight because she's a wildlife disease biologist. So this part then kind of turns into the public service announcement. I am not a medical profession, no. So please consult your actual medical care professionals for medical advice. But there are ways that you can reduce the likelihood of being the collateral damage of tick-borne diseases. The most effective thing you can do is wear light-colored clothing when hiking, so you can more easily see a tick if it latches onto your clothing. Wear pants, wear long sleeves, do the fashionable thing and tuck your pants into your shoes or your boots. Tuck your shirt into your pants, wear a hat. If you're gardening or pulling weeds, wear gloves. If you're okay with DEET, DEET is also effective against ticks. So you can be really cool and prevent or at least reduce the chances of ticks getting onto you. As sexy as this is, frequent tick checks are also a sexy and effective thing to do. So sexy that Brad Paisley wrote a romantic song about checking his girlfriend for ticks. It likely takes a few hours for a tick, once it latches onto you, to find a spot to start feeding and to infect you. So if you can, especially if you're in a high tick area, it's probably a good idea to check every couple hours. In addition to your clothing, you want to check in all the kind of dark, damp, foldy places of your body, like your armpit, behind your ear, your scalp. If you do find ticks on your clothes, you can use the effective method of like packing tape or some other kind of tape wrapped around your fingers and remove them like how you would remove lint. And then when you're done for the day, you'll want to do another more thorough check in the other more sensitive places. If you find a tick, there's only one effective method for removing them, only one. So don't listen to your cousin who thinks they know everything. Don't check the internet for ways to remove ticks. They'll tell you to cover them in nail polish. They'll tell you to twist them like corkscrew to uncorkscrew them. They'll tell you to burn it off your skin with a cigarette butt or smoke it off. There's only two ways that a tick disease is going to transmit to you. It's either going to be through its saliva or if it regurgitates its blood meal that it's already drawn it back into you. And so all of these nonsensical, tick removal methods just increase the chances that that tick is going to regurgitate the blood back into your body. So this is from the CDC website. I think that's a pretty decent source. The best way to remove a tick is with tweezers. You position the tick perpendicular to your body. You get the head of the tweezer right up to your skin. So you want to grab that mouth part complex. You don't want to squeeze the head or the body. You want to get right up to that mouth part. Pinch firmly and then steadily remove it. You don't want to rip it off. It's not a band-aid. You're working against that like cement adhesive. You're working against those backward pointing barbs. You're working against a tick that doesn't want to let go of you. So after you remove the tick, make sure you wash the area with soap and water, and then pay attention to your body. Definitely look for a rash. But if you don't have a rash, it doesn't mean you're not infected. This is the part where I can't tell you what to do. That's for the professionals. Some people will take a prophylactic round of antibiotics at this point, but definitely pay attention to your body. And if you suspect that you have a lot of ticks in your backyard, you can do the old tried and true method of dragging a white sheet or a cloth behind you on the ground to a tick that's like golden. Those ticks will grab onto it. That's what they've been waiting their whole life to do. And that's a good way of maybe seeing at least to what extent if you have a lot of ticks in an area. Don't forget to check your pets for ticks. And it's a good idea to take regular flea and tick preventatives as well. And that's really it. Oh yeah, Amanda showed me a little thing on her keychain that's a tick remover. And maybe I don't know if we'll show a picture of this at the end. So that seems, based on the concept, the physical concept, it's like a little bottle opener. It looks like that would also allow you to, maybe even better than tweezers, I don't know, get a tick straight up. So yeah, I think that's all. It's again, it's one of those things where if I were to add the part about Lyme disease and other things, that would make this way too long. But because ticks have such a successful plan, it's pretty straightforward, and there's not a lot more to say about them. I still don't like them. I still don't want them on me. And I don't know. Yeah, I probably still hate them. And we may have more reasons to hate them. So if you remember, if you've seen the possum episode, also from season 1, I spend a good amount of time mentioning that possums in your neighborhood are like amazing at getting rid of ticks, because they just kind of walk through everything and the ticks grab onto them, and then they'll groom themselves and eat the ticks off of them. I'm a little bummed to say that evidence for that is not solid, and they still probably are good at. They still probably eat ticks. We can refer to Amanda for this one. Good at keeping tick populations down, maybe, but the evidence is shakier than it was when I reported it the first time. So don't give up hope yet. Still love possums, still amazing, and they're still probably getting rid of some ticks, but more to come on that one. We'll pay attention to that one. And then there's this. So this is just hot off the presses of the National Geographic. So yes, our worst nightmare, flying ticks. They're not actually flying. But if you think of how pointless it seems, again, there's ticks are super dangerous and really bad, but some of the things are just comical. The way that they sit on the blade of grass and just, hold their arms out like they're meditating, the way that they balloon up to like a comical size. If it weren't for the, deadly nature of them, this would be more funny. So some of it is a little laughable. But so, sitting on a blade of grass, waiting for something to come by, doesn't seem great. It turns out you probably don't have to physically touch the tick to pick one up. They do have those little pincers that can grab a hold of anything. But we are alive. We are humans. We have an electric charge in our body. We can get struck by lightning. That electric charge can build up under certain conditions, especially if you're 8 years old and you shuffle your feet on the floor to shock your sister. We have an electric charge in our body. Other mammals have an electric charge. Ticks potentially have more of a neutral charge, but it can build up in any animal. And when you or another mammal come close to that tick, the tick can take advantage of that electrostatic charge difference between your body and their body, and they can actually ride that electrostatic charge through the air to your body. That also seems comical. That also seems like a wee. But they're light enough, and electricity is electricity. It's your positive charges are attracting negative charges and vice versa. And so in one sense, it's like your body is walking through this tick field, and you have these little tiny magnets all over your legs, or little tiny vacuums that just kind of suck up the ticks in the area. That's a depressing thought. It's not a huge field. I mean, it's not going to like just fly across a field and hit you in the face. You're only talking a couple centimeters, but a couple centimeters is a big deal, because now you're going from actually having to touch the tick to actually getting within that aura of the tick. So if it seems like you or someone is getting more ticks than they should, this may be the reason for it. The article had an accompanying video of a flying tick. So if you're watching this recorded, I can't share it for copyright reasons, but when you Google this title on your search engine, you'll get the article and the video. For those of you watching live, we'll watch it in just a second. But my final moment of Zen for this episode will end with the lyrics to that Brad Paisley song. I'd like to see you out in the moonlight. I'd like to kiss you, baby, way back in the sticks. I'd like to walk you through a field of wildflowers, and I'd like to check you for ticks. Oh, I'd sure like to check you for ticks. So thanks for joining me today. We'll see you next time. I will stop sharing my screen.